the teams that Patty Viverito had said, look, we were approached by A, B, C, D, and E about adding Murray State. It makes it geographically better, a nice fit. It lines up some of the other programs, and then some schools that aren't in that marriage, so to speak. So.
Don't you think they're getting set, though? And we talked about this off air, that they're getting set for the Bison and some of those teams to leave the conference. Yep. That's, I think that the Bison, the question is where they go. The conference, the Bison have outgrown the Missouri Valley Conference.
Got to have a place to go.
I know. But if the Bison go, you take UND, you take SDSU, and you take USD with. That's 4 pretty good football programs to say, would you like us?
Yeah, a package deal.
Right. We will come, we will bring revenue along with.
But there's so much turmoil in the NCAA with all the schools, so there's so many unknowns, and I think that's what's part of the issue.
Yeah. See, we actually talked about sports. Thank you,
Brought to you by DJ Coulter Agency.
DJ Coulter.
Don't be sad, Joel, because it's over. Be happy because it happened. We're glad.
What? thing for me, buddy. What's that?
Before this bullpen starts exploding in here, because Big Dave is in, so I know that something hot's coming in. A couple of days, we're going to find out probably today because of the weather situation in Minneapolis. You and I will be at Target Field as we are for opening day doing shows, so we're all good to go. Thank you, Jiffy Lube. But we'll probably find out today, I'd imagine, Joel, what the Twins are going to do regarding opening day.
Right.
Because the weather is going to be somewhat suspect.
Do not be shocked if opening day gets moved to Friday.
So they got a big decision to make.
Right. And I talked to the Twins yesterday for a little bit, and they're like, this is why we scheduled it on Thursday. Right. So if we need to, we can move it to Friday.
And if Dave Pepgren were trying to be, sit down. Just sit down. No, I'll make the decision. Okay, I'm out of here.
In fact, if you think that Jack Michaels is lying, just take a listen to this. Commissioner Pepgren had something to say last night.
Stewards of the sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. Where's the police that we can remove them?
Commissioner, I'm not going to lie to you. I like that about you. I like somebody that just says what he thinks and does what he thinks. And that must have got a little interesting last night at the Fargo City Commission.
Well, it was a commission meeting, and we were having our commission meeting, and then you can't get up and interrupt the meeting. And
he didn't follow. I mean, the point is, I wouldn't like this if it was a normal, hey, it was his chance to speak, but that wasn't what he was doing.
No, it was me talking, right? And we have time for open. You can talk for 2.5 minutes. That's when the public's turn, and this was not. And so it was.
Who was it? It was Wes filming?
It was. It's
okay. I'll just leave it there.
Anyway.
Yep. So then it begs this question: with all of that kind of stuff, why do you want the job again? Because you're running for the Fargo City Commission again.
That is a very good question, Joel. And but honestly, I love it, man. I love the job. I love the town. This is my hometown. I was born and raised here, and we got lots of great stuff going on. And believe it or not, I loved last night. That doesn't.
I believe it.
That doesn't.
You're built for last night.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
But I will say we got lots of good stuff going on.
There was a lot of talk about you running for mayor. Obviously, you thought about it. You said that to me, and you said that publicly before. What made you decide to not run for mayor and to seek your seat again on the city commission?
And I would say I went back and forth way more this time than any other time because I know the commitment that it is. And the one thing I will say, the mayor's job is even more commitment. You have to do a lot more public appearances, and when people want to speak to the city, they want to talk to the mayor. And I will say, I would have to behave a little bit differently if I was the mayor than if I'm a city commissioner. So that was part of it too. And the other thing I will say is if you look at Mayor Mahoney, and I'm the deputy mayor, if you look at what's gone on since we've been together and I've been the deputy mayor, we got a pretty good track record. And if you don't mind, I'll tell a quick story. The Bison have won 17 national championships in football, and they have a pretty good recipe. They get good players, good coaches. They run the ball, play good defense. They hopefully win their conference. They play home games in the playoffs and then go to Texas. Well, look, we have a pretty good recipe in Fargo. If you look at the downtown, if you look at University Drive, all the growth, all the success we have, the Bison aren't going to change their recipe because it's successful, and I don't believe Fargo should either.
Okay. So if you take a look at the relationship that you and Mayor Mahoney have, is that something then that you didn't want to run against him, that you would like? In other words, are you endorsing Tim Mahoney to be mayor?
I'm not going to endorse anybody because I have to work with whoever the citizens vote for. So I'll happily. But I will say, Mayor Mahoney and I, we disagree on lots of things. But if you look like on the economic development things, we vote together. Like last night, we voted on all those because we know how important that is. So we have differences, and I have differences with all the commissioners as well. But that was part of it, and I think if he wouldn't have run, I would have run for sure. Put it that way.
Okay. Tony Gehrig, not exactly somebody I'm assuming you're going camping with. He's not getting on the commission again. He's chose not to run for re-election. Did that make it easier to decide to stay on the commission?
That actually made it a little tougher because I'll tell you a quick story if you don't mind. So I was at the gym working out, and a guy came up to me. He was a big guy, maybe a biker, maybe a military, and he goes, "Come on, man, you got to run." And so then I was crying to him, saying, "Man, it's hard, and I'm outnumbered, and it feels like I'm pushing a rock up." He goes, "Yeah, you got to run. It's tough. You got to be there. You got to run." And so that was very. It's true, and I will say I'll be in the minority more than likely. Me against 4 other votes, however this goes, but that's all right. Sometimes you got to do the job.
That's on any given boat, though. On any given, the one thing last night in listening to the meeting last night that you brought a lot of passion to an argument was about the Fargo Airport Authority and what's going on. What upset you in terms of what is happening out at Hector that brought that kind of passion out?
Well, and this has been going on for many years, but we had an audit done that I've been asking for 8 years. And what it found was the leases, the prices were set in the 50 years ago. And so the lease prices for the hangars and all that are unbelievably below market.
Explain to people what that is.
So to give you an example, if you have a hangar out at the airport, you have to pay for the privilege of having that hangar there. And so you're charged by the square foot. Well, the prices are from 50 years ago. And for you or I, our rents aren't being paid like that. And so what's happening is that property is the taxpayer's property. And so we are not being compensated as we should.
So if Joel has a Cessna, he keeps it out at the Fargo Airport in a hangar, I'm not paying anywhere near the rent I should be paying.
That's it.
Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. What the passion was there. Who's holding it back? Is it the airport authority that should be looking at it, or who's determining that?
Well, the airport authority is, and we appointed another new member. And so each year that's the city commission's control. And so what's happening is I was on there as a liaison for a while. We don't have any idea. We aren't told these numbers. And that's why I requested this audit done by Ide Bailey. And that's what they found. They found a lot of other bad things. But that will, as time goes by, we'll find out more.
Okay, let's talk about Fargo when we come back. Let's talk about where you want to take Fargo in your next term if you get reelected to that seat. So stick around. Dave Pepcorn is in the house. He's chosen to run for his seat on the Fargo City Commission again. If you have a question, we're not going to take calls probably because, we're not going to take calls. But if you text in to 35270, I'll try to make sure he gets asked that question. Stick around. More coming your way. Fargo City Commissioner Dave Pepcorn has chosen to run for that seat again. A lot of people were encouraging him to run for mayor. I was predicting that he's going to throw his name in the hat, but then again, I predicted that that Aaron Rodgers would leave the Packers. So how am I doing this year? Am I doing okay, Dave?
I predicted Gonzaga was going to win the national championship.
How'd that go? Didn't go so well either. Somebody wants to know if we'd repeat what you said about the airport. No is the answer. But if you go to podcast, this will be podcast anywhere there's podcasts, and you can listen to what Dave said. What do you do with the job? Because there's no sense in being, to me, a maintenance guy. The janitors are needed, but that isn't going to make a city grow. What are you going to do with the job if you get it again?
We got lots of great stuff going on. First of all, the diversion is going to be 6 years, and so the dirt starts turning this spring, and so that's the first one.
Believe me, it already started turning. I drive through it every day.
And the second huge thing is the Red River Water Supply Project, and that's basically a pipeline from the Missouri River to the Cheyenne River, and that connects that will carry water. And basically, that will ensure water. We'll never have to worry about droughts for the city of Fargo, but it also benefits all the small rural water systems in eastern North Dakota. And so that project is about 6 years as well, too. So those are the two main things. But then the other thing, my passion is economic development and helping the downtown. And still got lots to work. We have 3 good projects. One of them is actually on one of my properties, and so I'm not going to be able to vote on it. But we have lots of things to do in the downtown, and obviously we can't keep spreading. We have to be more dense in the downtown, and also in the city of Fargo, we have to be more dense. We can't keep just using raw land.
If you listen to this radio station and it's a break, which I hope you do, you listen to the commercials as well, the people that are out there trying to tell their story, what you're going to hear is a lot of people advertising for workers. And if you go anywhere, you do too, because I know this, people are saying, I can't find the workers. You've been a small businessman. You've bought and sold businesses. How do you fix that?
Well, the city of Fargo, we're having the same issue hiring people, and we're having to raise wages. The one thing, Joel, this might not sound like a Republican or a fiscal conservative. We need to quit being a low wage area, and we have been. And to me, having people make more money is a good thing. And so I will. This is my theory. Amazon coming here has raised expectations, and that's a good thing. And so it's going to take a while for us to digest all this, but I think it's a good thing. I want everybody in Fargo to make more money so they can do what they want to do.
Should we be openly recruiting people of different regions, of different color, of different backgrounds, ethnicity? Should we be looking at let's look at the number of Hispanics that are trying to enter the country. Let's look at the Ukrainians that want to get put here now. I mean, should we be using opportunities like that to say, look, we need you here in the upper Midwest?
Absolutely. But I will say, our best potential source of, I think we should be recruiting more businesses, and that's Minneapolis. I think there's a lot of people that are looking for someplace, and I think that would be our primary thing. Our commute times in Fargo are 5 minutes versus a half hour. And
there are people who are sick of living in Minneapolis. They are sick of it. They didn't like what happened with the riots. They didn't like what happened with the whole defund the police issue. They didn't like what happened with the police, with the Floyd incident, your murder, basically. So, yeah, there's so much tension there. They just want to get out.
And so that's the way I look at it. That's a recruiting opportunity, not just for Fargo, but the whole everybody in our area.
Okay, so the relationship that the city of Fargo has with other entities that you can't control. Okay, for example, the Fargo School Board, the Fargo Park District, those aren't under your purview, right? So how do you make all of that work?
But I would say, our staffs all work together. So to give an example, the city of Fargo and the Park District, we work on many, many projects our staffs do already. But as far as the policy groups, you kind of have to, but that's part of our responsibility because we're all working for taxpayers. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I'm not sure that history, if it's getting better, then you're right. Because I don't think that history has proven it to be that way. I think that the Fargo School Board does what they want to do, and you guys are left scratching your head saying we didn't know about that. And so I don't know if the conversation's gotten better, Commissioner.
Well, I think we can always get better. But I would say there's lots of examples where the Park District and the schools, they work together with their properties to have a pool for But I do
the
think
truth is, you're second to none. I mean, a lot of much larger metro areas would love to have your park system, your school system. So I'm not being critical as much as what I'm talking as a property tax owner. What would you do to make sure your property taxes stay the same or go down? Because those entities need to work together to have that happen.
I totally agree, and I do think we have to do all we can to work together because that's we all have the same boss.
Okay, let's talk about approval voting. It's here, whether you like it or not. It's here. How is this going to affect your race? And just for people who are saying, okay, Heitkamp, what's approval voting? You get 10 names on the ballot. You can vote for all 10 of them, and whoever gets the most votes out of that 10 wins the race, and whoever gets the second most is going to win the race. Because it's my understanding 2 are up this time, right?
Correct. For the commission.
Okay,
correct.
so two people are going to win on that commission seat. How do you? I'm not saying whether it's a good thing or bad thing because it's done. What I'm saying is, how does this affect your race?
So if I'm speaking to people that really want to support me and vote for me, then the most effective way is to just vote for me once, and that's it.
That's the truth. If I were campaigning as a candidate for Fargo City Commissioner and people said, well, I really want you to win, then I'd say, just vote for me, period.
But it's a little, anyway, that's you said, it was passed. It's the most confusing thing.
Is it going to hurt you though?
No, man, nothing hurts me.
Okay. Sit down. It's interesting to start our conversation that way. And I tell you what, Eddie, maybe it's because both of us are a little rough around the edges, but
yes, we are.
The signal that you sent Tony Gehrig made news here. I will tell you that. Well, I'm going to miss that with him gone. The debate you two have.
Well, and it's kind of funny because we're supposed to be this similar political thing, but like you said, we're not going to be camping together. But I would say Tony serves our country and he served our city, so Thank you for your service.
I think good debate makes for good government.
And I've learned a lesson. I mean, you learn how to work with other people, and I've learned.
Commissioner, good to speak to you.
Anytime, Joel. Thanks for having me on, man.
You bet. Mark Watney, right after this. bit about, what the world's role is and what you expect it to be, or what you would want it to be. That's probably the best way of putting it when it comes to Ukraine. What you would be willing to do as Americans is what we're doing now as far as you're willing to go as Americans. I'm really curious about that, because that's a conversation a lot of people are having. They'll say, you know what we should do? Well, okay. Then they have ideas on what we should do. And then you start talking about, okay, if you do that, this is going to happen. Then all of a sudden they're not in the same place as, what we should do. And so when you see mass graves and you see some of what happened, it sends you to a place that calls for action. I understand that. But what I need to know is how far you're willing to go with that. And so we're going to do that today on News and Views. But USDA is going to distribute disaster relief aid to livestock producers. That's right. North Dakota Farmers Union has been working on this for quite some time. And they've been talking about, and this is nationwide, $750 million to livestock producers. Now, this is in areas where there was record-setting drought. This is in areas where North Dakota Farmers Union and obviously the U.S. government has determined that aid is needed for those livestock producers. Mark Watney is my go-to guy with the North Dakota Farmers Union. He's the president. He's the boss, and he's on with us. Mark, good to have you on News and Views.
Good morning, Joel. Appreciate the time.
Tell people what this is, where it's going, and why.
Well, this is what's called the WIP Plus program for 2021, and this dollars, the $760 million, is dedicated to those ranchers, primarily livestock producers, that had lived through a drought, maybe 2 years of drought in some cases. And obviously we're short of feed, and some had to sell cattle, some had to, go almost 1,000 miles to round up the hay. So if they qualified for the ELP program or the LFP program, they should check. They are going to get some dollars based on them payments, and there may be other opportunities as this program's rolled out. But this is a necessary thing, and obviously we worked hard to get it here and are just thankful that those dollars will be helping these ranchers out.
If there's a bunch of guys sitting around the frying pan having a cup of coffee right now listening to us, one of the things they're going to say is it needed? Or is this just kind of a, hey, we're making friends, kind of a wet kiss to ranchers? And so I'll throw that at you, Mark. Is this needed?
No, it's definitely needed. I mean, I took probably the most calls I ever have in the 20-plus years I've been at Farmers Union. I've taken calls from ranchers, and this was the most ever. And they really were. I mean, we were somewhat of the, if you want to call it, an epicenter of the drought. It was a big brown spot in the center of the state and west and south, and they just didn't have enough feed. And ranchers are really good. They generally bale more than they need. They have more product they need. But when you put a couple of years in a row or a severe disaster as this was, there's definitely a need. And of course, what are we going to have this spring? We're back into a drought scenario in about half the state. And if we don't get some rain, we're going to be looking for additional help.
So, Mark, is this all about them signing up for it? Because some of the ranchers I know, the last thing they want to do is sign up for any help from the government. I mean, will you and your organization be out there explaining to people how to do this and how to take part in this?
Yeah, we will certainly try to get that information. Again, it just came out, so we want to see how they're distributing it. The LFP program is one of the keys. We know that, and the ranchers will have to go in. I mean, they're going to have to pay attention if they want to participate. So what happens with these programs is when they get the dollars and they are told to distribute, USDA has to come up with a mechanism. That's what takes a little bit longer than we hope it would. And that mechanism is almost always based on something that currently exists, some type of program. And that's the way they can do it the most effectively and the most efficiently. So if people want to participate, they were part of it before, or they're going to have to go in and make some type of documentation that they have a need, and when they do that, then they should qualify and hopefully get some cash to help them through this troubling time.
So, all in all, what are you seeing from ranchers? Because I'm visiting with a cousin last night, and we're talking about some of the individuals that he knew that either were going to have to sell off their herd or have begun last year, selling off a large portion of their herd. And as he pointed out, this is generational. I mean, they built the genetics to where they know they have a great herd, and the next thing you know, they're going to end up starting all over again. And so, is that part of the conversation as well?
Well, it certainly is, and I know last year we came through it a little better. There was expectations of maybe 23% of the herd being sold, and I heard it was lower than 10. I don't know those exact numbers, but that's what I heard. And this year, again, if you're in that similar situation and you spent all that extra money, used up any extra inventory you had in your feed, and now you got to make this decision again, I think you're going to see another sell-off. It's early yet. We can get rain yet. I don't want to, be screaming the world's coming to an end yet, but it's certainly on their mindset as they go into this spring, not knowing if they're going to have the feed and make choices. And that is tough. You're right. So you start selling off parts of your herd where you're building up your genetics, and whether you're purebred or not, you're still trying to develop a very strong herd that you operate the way you think is the best. And when you have to sell off some of that stuff you're building up, it's really hard for the next generation. It's also hard for you to get back to that point, and you somewhat get to start over in some of that effort.
So, Mark, when you look at the government's involvement into agriculture in the last couple of years, and you look at what the commodity prices have been in the last couple of years, it means I have to ask this question, which is, are we going too far in aiding farmers, ranchers, when commodity prices have been very good?
Well, we tend to end up in these situations when we forget why we do farm programs, and a lot of people want to suggest that they're about just giving money out to farmers. But the reality is, this nation wants a very secure food supply. And what we've seen through the pandemic and in other logistics challenges, when we don't have that security, we have disruptions, and then the consumer ends up paying more. So to live in this world where less than 10% of your disposable income is going into food, that means that commodity prices are generally lower than they would be, because we want that ability to keep inflation and food costs down. That means you need to pay farmers, because the market tends not to reflect the true cost of production. So we create farm programs. Now, when we make these farm programs so poor, and we do it based on budget, there's not enough money in them to solve the problem. That safety net isn't enough. So then we get into this cycle of ad hoc disaster. So WIP Plus and all these programs with the trade issues, all of them are ad hoc disaster programs, because if we don't do it, we're going to lose that stable food production system, and we haven't built a strong enough safety net. So we need a farm bill that works, not only for all the commodities, but for the ranchers, livestock producers, and we need to put money into it based on the fact that we want a secure food system, and that's just what it's about.
Here's my selfish part. Obviously, I want a cheap food supply, and also I want my neighbors, my friends, my family to be doing well that are all ag producers. They do well, I do well. I understand the local economy here pretty doggone well. That being said, I don't, we can invest all we want locally in herds and whatnot to try to keep people on the land and ranching. And emails like this are a signal that you're doing a good job, Mark. This text message comes in and says it's definitely needed. I had to sell a third of our cow herd last year and traveled 40 miles in both directions to even get close enough for hay. But that being said, it does me no good to invest in this if the overall problem isn't going to be fixed, which is that very rancher we just talked about there is getting taken by the meat packers. And so, that to me would be one of the biggest things government should be working on, and not just helping them during a drought. Mark.
Oh, that's true. So now you're talking into the long-term picture,
right?
And over years, we've given away control of the marketplace, and we did it in much more than just meat packers. We did it in transportation and seed and fertilizer, and all these things come to haunt us. And people tend to forget it because it's over time. And so really you don't have a pricing mechanism that represents a true market when you have concentration like you do, and especially in that meatpacking industry. So we need to get back to where we're breaking these companies up. We're mandating that they purchase into a market system that's fair and equitable, and the price discovery system becomes real. And that's going to take a lot of time. The good news is we have an administration right now that at least is putting some pressure on and attempting to do this. We haven't had that attention for probably 50 years. So that's the good news. Now, whether we can get it accomplished through the courts or through legislation or through the Department of Justice going after these groups, that's to be seen. But at least we're working on that effort at the moment.
Yeah. Mark, always good to visit with you. Keep up the good fight. And I know I speak for a lot of ranchers out there that, they appreciate the fact that they're not being ignored. We can have a debate over where it should go, who should get it, whether it's needed in some of these areas. But what we can't have a debate over is that we want them there. And we don't want them selling off their herd. So appreciate it, Mark.
You bet. Talk again.
Mark
Thanks.
Watney, ladies and gentlemen. Let's head to the Weather Cave and find the Back to the News and Views Radio Network. A text message comes in and says, Joel, I could have told you 30 years ago that every country we invade from here on will be because they have tried to accept gold in payment for oil. Now it's Russia. How are we going to print money for farmers now? Do we go to war and protect the dollar? I sense pain ahead. Another one, Joel, after I paid pasture rent in March, I paid for all the hay. I was short from the drought. Those two expenses alone are $4,000 more than last fall's calf check. I still have to operate the rest of the year. Economics will force my liquidation. I guess that's the answer in terms of what Mark Watney was telling you he knew. He's clearly right. So the bigger issue, what Mark was right about, certainly was dealing with the issue that you have right now. Okay, if people are in a drought area, if they have to sell off their herd, this to me is something that you react to, you go out, you find out about, and you make happen. The other part, though, is, and I don't know how you do this, how you fine tune it, but if somebody doesn't need it, if they're benefiting from the economic times we're in, how do you make sure that they don't get what some of us might call free money? And that was a conversation I had, and stay away from the livestock, just in your mind as you build this conversation. But that was a topic that I brought up here on News and Views months ago, which was there were checks, and I think the Biden administration has been guilty about this, and I think our delegation has been guilty about this, because it's a way to make friends. It's a way to basically sit back and say, all right, look what I did for you. You got to like me, kind of a thing, while at the same time not looking at the federal deficit. And that is when you get farmers who have come to me, and I only have two. So I'm not trying to say that it's been a wave of people that have come to me, but I do have two people in production agriculture who said, I got a check from the government. I didn't know what it was for. It didn't take them but one phone call to find out what it was for, but this was above and beyond what they had already received to make sure that we have a good, cheap food policy. But this was all done in the name of COVID. This was all done in the name of how the economy itself was working. Now, I raised this question when John Hoeven was seeking out and barely won the Republican endorsement to be on the ballot in the fall, which was what's his body of work? When you look at what John Hoeven's accomplished, when you look at what he's done, what's his body of work? And if you're Rick Becker and you're trying to make an argument that the federal government shouldn't be involved in certain things, and that the deficit has exploded, and that all they do is say they're not going to spend money and they spend money, is this an example of that? I mean, is it? For me personally, if I was standing right next to John, I'd be voting with him. I would. I'd be voting along with what John voted for. I understand the concept of the cheap food policy, all of that. The difference between John Hoeven and myself is I wouldn't be lying about who I am. I wouldn't be saying I'm for less government. I wouldn't be sitting there saying that I'm going to vote to oh my God, the big priority I have today is to rein in the federal budget and to reduce the deficit, when in fact he's done nothing, absolutely nothing to do that. I mean, his actions don't take him there anywhere. There's no record of that. I had Kevin Kramer on prior to the Republican convention last weekend, and I said, what is John Hoeven's legacy? What is his body of work? And he said, well, he's fiscal conservative. BS. Total BS. I'm not saying this is wrong. In fact, I'd vote with him. I'm just saying don't tell me that, because I'm not buying it. Somebody said, and you answer and ask the tough questions, and you've got HE double hockey sticks of a lot more common sense than Hoven ever had. I don't know. I remember when Kent Conrad ran, and that was a time when America as a whole was really noticing the federal deficit. They were really noticing where we were at when it comes to our debt, who we were buying money from, what it was. I'm sure it's still scrolling, on Fifth Avenue or wherever in New York it is, but nobody pays attention to it anymore. I mean, nobody looks at the federal debt and says, all right, this is our top priority. We're going to get our fiscal house in order. We're going to reduce the deficit. How many of you know that under the Biden administration, under this last year, the deficit has gone down? I mean, how many of you know that? How many of you know or believe that everybody pays their fair share when it comes to taxes? It's tax season now, right? Many of you already filled out your forms, and if you get a slight tax return or you get a couple $100 back, that's a win and all of this. But you don't look at it each and every paycheck. Okay, this is what's going in. What I'm telling you is there are people that are making millions of dollars per minute, per half hour, per hour, and they got the tax break and you didn't. And you can say, well, no, wait a second. Your tax break is sunsetted. Don't forget that. Whatever tax break you think you got as a middle class in this country, that's sunsetted. And so the richest people I know in government are the United States Senate. John Hoven is one of the richest members of the United States Senate. It helps if your dad or your family had banks and they expanded those banks. And, you can say I've been in public service since I went to work for the bank in North Dakota. So since the 1990s, doesn't change the fact the family owns the banks and you're making money, right? So it's pretty easy to vote for a tax break for yourself. Heck, I wouldn't mind doing that. I wouldn't mind doing that. But the tax break doesn't affect me. It affected them. And so that top rate was, all they got to use is the words trickle down. Trickle down economics has never worked. I mean, basically, unless you're a yacht builder, I don't know that how many houses are enough houses. How many, they can spend their money where they want. I get that, but I don't have to subsidize how they get their money. I mean, I don't as the middle class in this country have to make sure that everything is in place and we pay for the infrastructure that they need so that they can make money, just being nice to deliver goods and products to us. Because that's the philosophy, right? We're lucky we have them. And to me, I'm wondering if America will take a step back. And as we look at what Russia is doing, the oligarch there, what the separation between the haves and the have-nots in Russia, and everybody's saying, well, they're a communist country and everybody just gets a piece of the pie and there's no capitalism that goes with it. Have you seen some of the yachts? Have you seen some of the wealth? Have you seen some of how they're living their life? Now, take what you're seeing there and take that times a factor. And that's what you're going to see here. Now, I grew up with next to nothing. I mean, I did. I grew up with next to nothing. When Sue and I found out we were going to be parents, and then we were going to be parents right away again, and the next thing you know, we're 22 years old with 2 little kids. I have to tell you, that's as broke as I've ever been or going to be in my life. I could go bankrupt tomorrow and not be any more broke than what I was then. That being said, you work hard, you believe in capitalism, you do what you can do, you take jobs, you take multiple jobs. One year, I had 7 different jobs that paid me to where it was 6. 6 different jobs that paid me to where I had to fill out and recognize I made income from that job. In other words, the 1099 or whatever it's called. So I still should be able to name them. I mean, I had Real Water, I had I was in the Senate. I refereed college ball, which was separate than refereeing high school ball. I worked part-time. I mean, I had all these different jobs, right? And so you get ahead. You hope you get ahead. Sue worked hard. She worked a lot more hours than she got paid for. You hopefully get ahead to a point now where we each own our own car. There's a big statement, right? But you sit there and you take a step back and you say, what is it about hard work that it doesn't get you to the point where you can look at a tax bracket and say it's fair, that it's fair. We all just, I'm not sure that Steve Forbes was it Steve Forbes? It was Forbes. I remember that wasn't right about the flat tax. It's like, look, you pay this and there you go. Everybody pays 15%. Just pay your 15%, but you can't hide your income, right? So here you sit with John Hoeven, who, when you look at the debt, it grew. You look at the deficit, it grew. I mean, it grew. And so his income grew and grew and grew. Now, does that make me be an individual that doesn't appreciate capitalism if I point out that the policymakers are putting things in place that benefit them? I don't think so. And so if you're Kevin Kramer and you're going to try to sell to me that John Hoeven's body of work is his fiscal conservatism, go sell that to somebody else. I mean, I'm not buying it. And you could hear it in Kevin's voice. You could hear the, I'm going to say this because it's the right thing to say, and conservatives like to have it said, but you could hear he didn't believe it. I'm reading into something from somebody I've known and been a political adversary of for years. But you could hear in his voice that what he was saying he knew wasn't right, that it wasn't real. And I'm trying to, for the life of me, figure out if there's any level of accountability for that. So the accountability would have been over the last weekend, which was when you have 2,300 or whatever delegates come to just bring an ego into check. Just bring, I don't know. I mean, how would you take a step back and look at this? I mean, when you don't hold public forums, when you don't meet with the public that comes to DC to meet with you, when you staff everything out, when you don't get back to people other than through a form letter, when you won't do tough media. And when I say tough media, you can find any show that you want to go on where they're going to hug you and say thank you. But every now and then, I would think you'd want to be intellectually challenged to where you'd come on a show like this and get asked a tough question. But the biggest criticism I would have that the Republicans, that the Bastiat, or however you want to describe them, Republicans might have fixed on this last weekend in Bismarck, might have been the fact that they made him say something. And I mean it. I mean exactly what I'm getting at there is the fact that you can ask John Hoeven the same questions, he'll never answer it. He won't. He'll be very deliberate. He'll be very slow. He knows the timing matters. He knows the more time he's pausing, the less it's going to get out there. He's smart. One thing you have to say about John Hoeven is he's incredibly smart. And he's good at politics the way politics is today. But is it going to stay that way today? Is that what's going to be expected? So the conservatives in the Republican Party, in the North Dakota Republican Party, put John Hoeven in a position where he had to speak. And I'm not talking about getting up there and saying things like, I love my country in North Dakota, and we are one of the biggest ag producing states, and we're one of the biggest oil producing states, and our people work hard. Heck, we all can give that speech, right? We all can. Now, that isn't what the conservatives want from him. They want, hey, what are you going to do to reduce the budget? Give me examples of where in that budget you're going to reduce spending. You know, it was suicide. It was suicide for a number of those delegate votes. Absolute suicide for Rick Becker to come on this show and say that he didn't believe the federal government belongs in crop insurance. That was suicide. John Hoeven, when his staff people, who, by the way, they're listening, right? And folks, guys, if you're listening, you know, that you did this. You did it well for your boss because you grabbed that sound and you turned it into a commercial right away. I mean, right away. Because those delegates that were coming to Bismarck were farmers and they were ranchers. And we just heard about aid that's going out to farmers and ranchers. Well, federally subsidized crop insurance is aid to farmers. It is. That's a government program. You want to use subsidy, you want to use whatever word you want. Use cheap food policy. Do that. But the truth of the matter is that's money that is added to the federal deficit that goes to farmers as direct payments based upon the argument of what's happening in their lives. So for those of you that got up in your pickup today and didn't farm and you went to work, what was there for you? What happened to you? What happened to that man and woman that today put on the steel-toed boots and said, "Let's go. I got a job to do." Or what happened for that woman that said, "You know what, I'm going to take a part-time job and I'm going to work as a receptionist here so I can make ends meet and maybe me and my husband can take a vacation this year." I mean, I don't know. But what when it turns out is the government doing for you? Because if that's the role, if that's the success of you as an elected official, it's what the federal government is doing for you financially. What is it? And that, to me, is what the conservative Republicans in Bismarck were the best at. They were the best at pointing that out. And I liked it. I liked the fact that John Hoeven was on his heels. I liked the fact he was nervous. I wouldn't vote for Rick Becker. I'd probably have voted for John Hoeven if I would have been sitting in one of those chairs. But then that's the reason they don't like John Hoeven, is because Joel Heitkamp would vote for him in that convention setting. So that's what's going on out there. They don't have Democrats to beat on anymore in North Dakota. They're pretty well non-existent in many ways. So they're beating up on each other. They're eating away at each other. And in some cases, the true colors are showing. Let's get to the Weather Cave and visit with Too Tall Tom. Tom? Because he's like one of the greatest guitarists in rock and roll history.
See, I actually really like Queen because I became obsessed with them after watching the movie.
Mm-hmm. After watching the movie?
Yeah.
You didn't when listening to your dad's music, which he made you grow up listening to?
He wasn't a big Queen guy. You know him.
Really?
He's a Boston guy.
Oh, I know.
He liked some of the Queen stuff, but there were songs that I learned from watching the movie that I'd never heard before.
Your dad,
like Radio Gaga.
Your dad and I got into a big ta-da one time because my argument was and still is that once you've heard the first Boston song, you've heard every one. Right? I mean, the nothing really changes.
Sound.
They have a very similar sound on every song they've ever. One thing you have to admit about Queen is they reinvented themselves. In fact, that was the big argument their producer had with them, was the fact that they wanted to reinvent themselves and take some risks. And so, Brian,
what does it start with?
M.
Miller.
After April.
March. What?
After April.
May.
There.
Oh no.
So I just say this?
I'm gonna say that I've been sick for a while, so the brain's a little jumbled.
If I would have said after April, you would have said after April, and I'd have said March, you would turn that into a promo.
Yeah.
Well, you turn this into a promo.
I don't know. We'll see.
No, I know. I absolutely know the answer to it.
The thing is, if you saw my face, you would see that I didn't even recognize the wrongdoing right away.
Why?
I said in March and thought that was right.
She's been sick, ladies and gentlemen. And quite frankly, on more of those questions, she'll get me than I'll get her. But
Brian May. Yeah, that's right.
Amazing guitarist. Still out there playing, I might add.
Who is the other guitar guy?
Oh, the bass guy? He's alive. I thought he was dead.
And he kind of plays it funky.
Right. Just kind of a side to side.
I feel like they had a nickname for him, though.
So do you think that bass guitarists are good guitarists? That they
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
See, to me, the most underrated person in any band is the bass guitarist, the bass
Yeah,
man.
because it looks easy and you can't always hear the bass.
But they have to keep the beat, and it has to be steady, and they have to be consistent, and they have to be able to still be artistic at the same time. That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. All right, let's get back to work. I don't know where to go with this. How do you stay? You know what I'm going to talk about, Abby. What?
Yeah.
So tell me how to deal with this. What to do? Could you?
How to pivot to it, or
no, just how to even say it with a straight face.
Well, that's the point of your show. You have to talk about a lot of interesting stories.
Okay, well then let me throw this at you. We've got a Fargo school board member, Jennifer Benson, who is it called furries? Is that what they call themselves, right?
Yep. Yep.
So there's people who are out there trying to make a point and trying to take things to a great exaggeration by saying that they're cats, apparently. And there is one or two of those individuals that dress up with certain cat type features. But if you dig into it, it would absolutely it would not shock me if I understand what point they're trying to make, which is many of these individuals are trying to beat up on the transgender students by saying, look at me, today I'm a cat, right? But all of that gets compounded when you have a school board member who does absolutely no research, who immediately goes to the media and puts her name and the reputation of the Fargo School Board out there and says, well, it's my understanding that certain schools are putting kitty litter down now in the bathroom. It's like, okay, you got that on your ultra-conservative feed in the morning. Okay, you looked at, I don't know, the people you follow on Twitter, or people text you that with oh man, did you hear, Jennifer, what they're doing now? They're putting kitty litter down. Well, here's the thing. I would guess that because of her relationship as a school board member, that she has Rupak Gandhi's cell number, and she could call him, and she could say, Superintendent Gandhi, I'm one of the individuals that you answer to because I'm a school board member, and I have constituents who believe that we're putting kitty litter down to deal with the needs of these women who see themselves as cats. And so, are we in fact doing that? I'm not lying here, folks. I'm not lying. Now, you can look at another school and say, well, they're doing it in Detroit. That's Detroit. I don't even know where. I didn't, the point that I'm trying to get at is if you're elected as a school board member, wouldn't it be then your responsibility to know what your school is doing before offering an opinion in the media? Wouldn't it be to your benefit to call Moorhead, Minnesota, before you say, I hear Moorhead's doing this? If that's the case, if you as an elected official are going to do I hear, somebody said, somebody told me, that's the difference between gossip and fact. You have access to the facts. You do. And so when you get a school board member like that, now don't forget this. In fairness to the Fargo School Board, they sanctioned Jennifer Benson. They don't have the right to remove her. They don't have the power to remove her. But her actions as a school board member got so extreme that they actually voted to sanction her. Now, I cannot imagine something that out in the community if I were an elected official, I would dislike more than to have to come home and look at my husband or my kids or look at, the people that supported me and say, well, the rest of the school board sanctioned me tonight. Unless, of course, you're playing into that strict ideology that this is the way it's supposed to work. And, oh my goodness, this is the conservative values I have, because that is it. That's what's driving her here. This whole notion that, if we're not conservative, we don't, that doesn't belong in public schools. Well, you know what? There isn't kitty litter in your school. There's a note. There is, it maybe was some floor dry in shop, or maybe right by the door, the janitor kept some de-ice so he could throw it out and so you didn't fall on your butt. I don't know. Something probably looked like kitty litter to you. But there isn't kitty litter in your school. Okay? The superintendent came out and said there isn't kitty litter in your school. The superintendent in Moorhead. She didn't say it this way, or he didn't say it this way, I should say. But he didn't say, I might have said it differently. I have no idea where her head is. But apparently it's not where it belongs, because there isn't kitty litter in our schools. And she had no right to inject us into a political philosophy that she had based upon what is an opportunity to raise the transgender issue again. Because that's what this is all about. This is all about a problem that doesn't exist. This is all about making sure that one more time you can bring your so-called Christian values, your so-called right moralistic values in to make sure you beat up on a transgender student, and then ignore the fact that in many cases, not many cases, the stats show that out of all the students you have that commit suicide at by far the highest rate, it's your transgender students. So why not find another way to kick them? Right? Why not find another way to beat them up? So what's next? After you say things that aren't true, you acknowledge things that aren't true, you do what I'm calling the Vladimir Putin, which quite frankly, I think it's fair to say that when you lie and you lie and you lie and you lie and you expect people to believe it, that you know what, some are. And thank God you at least got one talk show that's going to tell you there's no kitty litter in the school. But thank you, school board member Benson, for doing your homework. It's called homework. And many of the students you're supposed to be working on behalf of do theirs. Let's get to the weather cave and visit with Too Tall Tom. Tom? All right. We're done beating up on the cats. Is that okay?
That's
the furries, the...
be nice.
It's like, where do you go with that? I mean, if you're sending your child off to public school and say, hey, now listen to people, behave, do what you're told to do. You're going there to learn. And then one of the school board members is saying there's kitty litter in the bathroom because they have to deal with women that want, or girls that want to be cats.
Yeah, that's something that she should have looked into.
So you can see people for attention or for effect. You can't change the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that there are students who associate with a different gender. There are transgender students every now and then, occasionally. And for the individual that texted in and said, well, why don't they seek counseling rather than suicide? Do you think their parents haven't tried to help them any way they can deal with this issue? I mean, how uncaring do you have to be to try to make an argument and make your point based upon the fact that they, use as part of your argument, they're putting kitty litter down in the public restrooms when you know it's not true, or at least you should know it's not true, or at least you're a phone call away from it not being true. Well, here we are down in Florida, right? So in Florida, the Don't Say Gay bill, that passes. Florida is a very red state. You know, why people that are Democrats in Florida think it's going to be a blue state is because they think it's going to be a blue state. It's not. It's a red state. And, my guess is it's going to continue to vote red, even though I think they have a wonderful United States Senate candidate in Val Demings. I hope you all she to me is what the Democratic Party needs to get to. There's my criticism of the Democratic Party. Former police chief, very tough on crime, very unforgiving when it comes to the argument that certain people make for committing crimes on social issues and those type of things. It's like, look, nothing in your life empowered you to commit this crime, to sell drugs, to murder someone, to assault someone. Nothing. And I love that about her. I don't think Val Demings is a wonderful, wonderful candidate just because she's black. I believe Val Demings is a wonderful, wonderful candidate because she understands law, order, justice. But she is from Florida. Take a look at her campaign. But she's smart enough to know that Disney is still a pretty good outfit and good to have in your state, right? She's smart enough to know that you don't run around bashing Disney, that when you look at what they've done on behalf of kids, I mean, I look at my kids and what a huge role Disney played in their lives. And so now you've got people running around saying that Disney is trying to corrupt your kids. I mean, because Disney didn't come out and say, boy, you can't say the word gay. I mean, no, they acknowledge there are gay people out there and everyone's welcome at their theme park and everyone's welcome to watch their movies and everyone's welcome to buy one of those Mickey Mouse hats that I bought for my girls with their little names engraved on back. I don't get it, but when you start beating up Disney, won't there be some backlash? discredit those who disagree with them. Their approach is destroy anyone that does. Sadly, the students are the ultimate victims. So she's got her enemies out there. The word on the streets is here in the Fargo area is that when you have a school board member like that, you know, probably after you're censured or you're not going to, you know, run for the school board again or get the same support for the school board again. I don't know. I do know this, that, you know, that probably forces some people as politicians to run for different jobs. And the rumor is that Ms. Benson, who believes that there's kitty litter down in the bathrooms, even though she was a phone call away from knowing that didn't happen, that she is, in fact, running for the city commission. So why not? I mean, why not? I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. Joel, let the Republicans boycott Disney. Then it will be the happiest place in the world. Laugh out loud. What happened to civility in our world? Oh, what we once considered bad is now good. And what we once considered good is now bad. Joel, the Republican social issues are all about keeping the right-wing rubes whipped up. Republican supporters, as you have just pointed out, do not think about or check to see if something is true. They just run with the party line. Let me get to the phone lines here. It takes a couple clicks, and I will make sure that you get the opportunity to get on statewide radio. Let's get to it. Let's get to Jim. Jim, you're on News and Views.
Yeah, hi, Joel. Let's just get a couple things clear here. Jennifer Benson never said anything about putting kitty litter in bathrooms. Now, there's kind of, it's not about a movement or it's a trend among kids. You ever heard these things? They're called furries, okay? And that's what these kids are doing at school. They're putting on cat ears and tails, and they're licking themselves, and they're making meows because they're identifying as cats.
Or Jim, or are they looking for attention?
Or they could be looking for attention. That's possibly too. Who knows? That's more likely because I think the whole thing is they're telling these kids now that you can be anything you want. Well, sometimes I think they take it a little too far.
So let's go to another place. C.S. Haugen. I'm basing this off an article by a journalist, and it's in Foreign Publications. Here's what Jennifer Benson wrote on Tuesday, March 29th. In one of my conversations this afternoon, a student did inform me that there are now litter boxes in the Moorhead school restrooms. So what do you say to that? Because that completely...
Did Jennifer Benson say that? Or was that what the form twisted? If you read the article...
Wait a second, Jim. So your whole thing is that the reporter got it wrong.
If you read the article, there's nothing in there that says anything about her saying that. The form has twisted this whole thing around.
Wait a second, Jim. Come on. So one is true and one is not. I don't know. What you're saying is, because this isn't they heard, they're saying that Jennifer Benson said, in one of my conversations this afternoon, a student did inform me that there are now litter boxes in Moorhead school restrooms. That's either a fact or not, Jim.
And that's what Jennifer Benson said. That's what the forum article stated, right?
Exactly.
Okay. That's what a student said. Did Jennifer Benson say that there are actually litter boxes?
That's my point, Jim. My point all along is that you are a school board member. You have a higher standard. You have the job of finding out if it's true. What if a student that she spoke to said that Pluto was coming down to Earth and going to crash into it and wreck the Earth? Is she going to say that? Is she going to say
she's just informing basically what she had heard from a student, and then she's just relaying that? She's not like she's just finding that as fact. It's what she was told.
She's
and
a
there we go
school
again.
board
her
member, Jim.
Her words are being twisted
Jim.
to make her look bad because there's people out to get her.
How in the world people wouldn't be out to get her if she didn't label and continue and perpetuate a lie about Moorhead Public Schools putting down kitty litter in the bathrooms to facilitate and to help students who associate with being a cat?
I don't think that's perpetuation at all. I think she's just reporting what she had heard. She's not. It's just, again, it's twisting it, Joel. It's just twisting.
You don't believe that she has a responsibility as a school board member to not say, this is what I heard, that maybe it would be incumbent upon her to do her homework before she labels a school district or people with the thought that this is going on in the Moorhead Public School District.
Don't we all kind of say things in passing in conversation?
She's
about
a school board member.
Stuff like that.
Jim, she's a school board member. I mean, you and I have had many a conversation, and you got a level of common sense to you. If somebody would have put a microphone in front of your face, and the issue would have been about kitty litter in bathrooms, which is what this article's about, right? That's the premise of it. And you were a school board member, would have you said, well, somebody told me they're in the Moorhead public restrooms?
Don't you think we're really making a tempest out of a teapot here, Joel? I mean, really, there's a bigger fish to fry. The teachers aren't getting paid enough. Kids aren't being disciplined in schools. You know, the school board turns its back on the teachers and the issues and everything else, and we're worried about kitty litter because someone said kitty litter in a bathroom.
But Jim, the reason it's being talked about is because a school board member didn't say, look, we've got issues. We've got real issues here. We've got a shortage of teachers. We've got part-time teachers that don't believe that they're being treated fairly. We've got a bunch of teachers about to retire. We've got lower test scores than what we may want. I don't know. And I don't even know if they got lower test scores as much as what I know this. That isn't how she answered it.
I don't know. We could go around and around with this. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think, like I say, someone asked her a question, she responded something she's heard. Look at what our president, the things that's been coming out of his mouth, okay? But he gets a pass from the media. We're going after a local school board media.
First off, okay, thank you, Jim. And thanks for this civil conversation about it. It's the one thing I love about debating Jim. You know, we may disagree, but we always do it in a civil way with a little bit of passion. People who sit there and say that these things don't matter. Imagine being the superintendent of the Moorhead Public School System. Imagine being the superintendent of the Fargo Public School System. And you've got a board member going around saying, well, this is what I heard. This is what I heard. When you're one phone call away, you're one phone call away. Instead, on the newspaper that is going to be on record for the rest of your life, you're sitting there saying, all right, here's the thing. I'm hearing that they're putting kitty litter down in the bathroom for students that associate as kitties, as cats. And who pays the price for that? Who pays the price? Students do. That's right, students. And students that go there for a public education with school board members that are responsible enough to know right from wrong and to do their homework. So you can say a tempest out of a teapot, Jim. I don't believe that. I don't believe it at all. I believe that this is a perfect example of using an issue that isn't an issue for political gain with a political base. And that's the base that goes out there each and every day and tries to find a way to beat up on transgender students. That's what this is about. The kitty litter isn't about solving or resolving an issue of whether or not kids are associating with themselves as cats. I mean, you could say that's just ridiculous, Joel. That's what this is about. That's why this is happening. And Ms. Benson is put forth a number of school board members that want to fly underneath the radar and really make the case of why public school system in the community I'm sitting in Fargo has gone to hell in a handbasket. When in fact, I think the Fargo public school system is a pretty doggone good public school system. And I think that the people that run it are pretty doggone good at what they do. Are they going to get in a fight with the union every now and then? You bet. That's the nature of the union and the nature of administration, right? Are they going to come to an agreement and keep them in the classroom where they belong? Hopefully always. Are they going to address transportation issues, school district line issues? There have been things that I have severely disagreed with the Fargo School Board on, and I've made that known to individual members. There are individuals on the Fargo School Board that I thought were doing a fabulous job that I question whether or not they do a good job. But that doesn't change the fact that they're doing the job. And they're not running around sitting there out in public media saying that another school district has, what I heard, put down kitty litter when in fact they haven't. It would take us, and not because I'm a member of the media, it would take us 1, maybe 2 phone calls, tops, to find out if the Moorhead public school system put kitty litter down in the bathrooms. 2 phone calls. But heaven forbid you'd make those before you ended up on the front page of the paper, making everyone from the Fargo School District look foolish. Let's get to the weather cave and visit with Too Tall Tom. Tom? 880-5346, people challenging the notion that Joe Biden is a liar, saying, give me examples. But they could, as one individual said, I could give you hundreds of examples of where Donald Trump lied. I will say this, the whole liberal media notion, the job of media is to point out when you're lying, what you say, and what, whether or not it's true or not. And so people who think that the media was much harder on Donald Trump, he lied. I mean, if Joe Biden has lied, you'd have to make an argument that Donald Trump lied way more. Okay, the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is that the people around where I live accepted it. They would use phrases like, well, that's just Donald Trump. He lies. It's like, okay, that's become the standard for being president. You can lie, and you can get caught lying, and we'll just blame the media for it. Jim, you're on News and Views. Go ahead, Jim.
Hello, Joel.
Hello.
Say in the beginning of the show, you talked about the flat tax and farmers and the deficit and John Hoeven, but I'd like to address the flat tax. You said maybe we need a flat tax. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but every flat tax put forward is a Republican plan designed so the rich don't pay taxes. Dividends, interest, and capital gains are exempt from every flat tax proposal, whether it's Dick Armey or Steve Forbes or whoever.
Right, but Jim, what I was talking about was a flat tax, and any details in regards to that would have to include not exempting revenue made the way you just described. It's
right.
About revenue. It's about revenue. If you make this, you pay that much.
But if you go ahead.
Yeah, well, you can't sit there and hide it because it'll never work if you hide it. It won't.
But if you exempt all the wealthy people, which don't get a 1099, they don't get a salary. It's all stock and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're exempting a huge amount of revenue. You're exempting it.
Yeah, but again, I'm talking about a concept versus a specific. Jim.
Right, I get that. I didn't know that. The other one is farmers. Remember when we were talking about there was no John Deere equipment to be bought last fall?
Mm-hmm.
And now there is, and there's a reason for that, Joel. It isn't that they needed farm equipment to farm. They needed write-offs. In the fall, you know how much income you're going to have, and the number one goal these days in farming is to avoid paying any income taxes whatsoever, and you do it with write-offs, whether it's a King Ranch pickup or a new John Deere combine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you argue that. The big argument they had was that it wasn't there to buy last fall. So.
Yeah, well, they ran out of it because they had so much income in 20 and 21 that they ran out of farm equipment for write-offs.
Yeah.
Number two.
Yeah, the clock's got me, Jim, but you're always welcome to call in and be part of News and Views, and Jay, you as well. We just don't have time. Abby, you're the one going, so just so you know.
With what?
Head over to Moorhead. Take some pictures of the kitty litter. All right, good riding with you, folks.